Hi, I'm Matty and welcome to another episode of our Archive Dive. So this week we're going to be talking about the 1930s, one of my favourite decades in terms of dresses particularly. And it's interesting to put things into context in the 30s. So we've kind of come out of the 20s, everything was a little bit shapeless and we'd come up a little bit shorter. And as with everything in fashion, generations just want something different. It's also really important to remember that we'd gone through the crash in 33, the start of the war in 39, 38. So there was so much going on in this decade, and it really impacted the lives worldwide, especially kind of like the US and the UK. But one thing that's really easy, a really easy way to talk about 30s dresses is to talk about, so the fluidity of the lines changed completely. So things for the most part got a lot more slender. There was a waist, the waist was back, it was great. And the easiest way to think about it is about a fussiness on top. So basically what we started to get is this huge kind of like shape on the top and a very slender, beautiful waist. So the first thing that I'm going to show you is this really gorgeous thing. This is really early 30s, but a really great example. So we've still got all this really beautiful lace work, as we were talking about from kind of Victorian age, but these beautiful sleeves on top, and like the way that they're cut is incredible. And it was, what's crazy about this dress is the fact it was in our Soho store for years. I remember it being on the wall, and nobody bought it. What? It's crazy. So now it's in our archive and we've kept it safe. But it's really beautiful, and it's again, it's just this. We've still got this kind of like shortness from the 20s, but we've started to kind of go into this really gorgeous sleeves, and then we start to talk about serious sleeve action. So this top is absolutely beautiful. It's really delicate. We've got this gorgeous netting here, and so we've got, when we talk about sleeves, we imagine in the 30s this incredible kind of like puffiness. So the big sleeves were called kind of leg and mutton sleeves. So they were pleated here, huge, and then came into a really tight, either depending on here, on the arm, or down onto the forearm. But this is absolutely perfect example. So you can see how all this huge, I mean the pleating in this is absolutely stunning. There's so much work in it, and also this pleating around the bodice. So you can see now that we've started to cut the waist back into the garments again. These ties are great. These ties are waist ties are really great through the 30s, because what it meant was we could get this really fantastic slight shape through it. It's absolutely gorgeous, and all that amazing buttoning down the back. Stunning. Again, kind of a really great example of all this kind of like wonderful pleating here. And it's really great. What's really important about like some of the 30s stuff was this, right? And we haven't got a huge amount of it here in our archive, but some of the prints in the 30s were really incredible. There was a load of geometry that kind of came through, and it's nice because we can kind of see it here on these little silver and golds. But a really great example of how that kind of like geometric print, and I think we saw that through in the 70s somewhere. Yeah. So that kind of like geometry come through into the 70s stuff as well. So you know, it was a really that kind of geometry in print was really influential and really important in the decade. These are beautiful. It's almost kind of like Roman details here. Gorgeous. What's really important to remember is, and this is a really big thing, is that because of the war, because of the Depression earlier on in the decade, Hollywood became a really important part of people's lives. And that was because it offered, you know, there was so much going on, so much bad stuff going on in people's lives day to day. What they really needed was an escape. And what that meant was the fact that the dresses that they saw on screen, they really wanted to mirror. Those dresses just became such an important part of people's everyday culture and everyday dreaming, really. You know, these people would, you know, if you kind of sat in a screen in Birmingham, and you see this beautiful gown on this American glamorous actress from Hollywood, you know, and this is a really great example of that. So we've got this really, like I was saying, this really new kind of, this real new silhouette. So we've got this really beautiful shape. She's in a bit of a state, but, you know, she is literally, you know, nearly 100 years old. She's 90 years old now. So we've got this whole length again, in contrast to the 20s again. This phenomenal swag just here at the back. And these incredible cape sleeves. With just this beautiful detailing in it, in an amazing crepe. So you can see there that, you know, in terms of where we were from the 20s, we've got you can immediately see it's really fussy at the top. It's really gorgeous. So we're going to have all this shape here, and we're going to come into this really beautiful waisted and this long fluid lines. What else have we got here? This is when we talk about how kind of like 30s Hollywood wow dresses, and this one in particular is one of my favourites, and this is just off the scale. When we talk about sleeves, your tubular sleeves don't go much crazier than this. And I've worn this and I know how incredible it feels. But again, it's just so, there's so much going on here. These beautiful, massive ball buttons, literally all the way to the floor. Again, this really fluid line, and these sleeves that are just from heaven. I mean, the work in that. They've actually got rope in them. You can see the rope, and we'll see some of that as well in the 70s. But that's a particularly stunning thing on that. In a really gorgeous crepe. What else have we got? Ooh, we've got some really beautiful things of in our archive. Some really amazing 30s nightwear. Because what was great about it was the fact that because we had this much long, slender line, nightwear just looked so stunning. And these are some really gorgeous examples of that. Again, we've got this waist back again, all these pleats to give a really gorgeous shape, and again, these great waist ties just to pull that in and make that long, slender line even more exaggerated. This is one of my particular favourites. This is absolutely stunning. And now I can see Neda's face just dropped behind the camera, and it's absolutely incredible. This beautiful kind of like one-shouldered affair. Again, with waist ties. And I mean, I don't know how that's actually lasted that long. And again, it's great because we've still got kind of like, when we look at the way that it's cut along the bottom, we've still got a few kind of like 20s elements in, just to add the extra little bit of fabric across the bottom. But again, that long fluid line really kind of positions it to the 30s. One of the really big fabrics that they kind of started using as well, was really popular during the 30s, was velvet. And we've got some really great examples here. Some that are absolutely phenomenal, because we're going to end with some real showstoppers now for our little 30s things. So what was great about velvet was the fact that on screen also, when you lit it, it just really came alive. But this in particular is like a vampiric 30s dream. You've got all this. There's a lot of lace work in dresses through the 30s, and you can see that here. You can see these gorgeous sleeves here, these 3/4, and also all this incredible pin-tuck pleating here, and you can see just there how it's gathered incredibly just over that shoulder, and again this incredible line and this beautiful belt, just to make sure that we can guarantee we've got that waist. So you know, we're seeing that again. Was in our stores, and now it's got a great angle here. So this is one of my favourite things in our archive, and it's really stunning, and I think it's going to find your hand. But when we talk about how kind of like the fussiness of the top of garments, and also this incredible use of velvet, this amazing sapphire blue. I mean, look at this. This is just incredible. And the zips were really early as well for that point. So just to see this incredible cut. Again, we've got all this amazing pleating. I mean, to put this into perspective, to put this amount of kind of pleating and into this zip takes so much effort. And again, I've got the same on the back, so it's absolutely stunning, absolutely stunning. And what's great about it, and this is what's really interesting about this fabric, is that it's a silk velvet rather than a modern poly velvet, so it just feels so beautiful. And it's much lighter, and it falls as well a lot more differently than modern velvets do. And it's great because it's got these little side poppers, probably because they'd spent all the money making all these zips in there. That's particularly special. And the last thing we're going to show you is another great example of kind of like 30s kind of Hollywood style, but this time it's a coat. Now, we only got this in very recently, but what's so amazing about it is that it's got all these the structure of this coat is really incredible. So like, as we were saying, we've got all these massive billowing sleeves, and all this pleating down here is just absolutely stunning. Again, in silk satin, silk velvet, and this really beautiful ermine collar. And I know that fur isn't everybody's cup of tea, but the actual cutting of that is really, really stunning. And these sleeves are just something else. And again, mirrored in the 80s, you know, for those dolman sleeves that we see through in some of the 80s garments. So that is our 30s archive dive. Thanks for joining us.